Welcome to Artist Trauma. This week we did Jean Genet's The Balcony in this fine collection of plays.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Uh, this
It's
actually
a
is like this is actually like the fourth theater of the absurd dramatist we've done.
it's
We've
good.
done Beckett, Penner, Ionesco, and now Genet. So we got a we're gonna get good coverage here. Good coverage.
Yeah, yeah. It was different than the other ones. It's the first part was truly funny, and there are moments that are uproariously hilarious, especially when it regards fantasy and role playing, of course. That's the whole thing of the play. The setting of the play is that we're in a brothel, and it's a microcosm of society of sorts, although that only sustains itself a little bit because then it becomes society.
Society.
Yeah, it just becomes society.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And
Yeah,
on some level, I thought it was like a lot deeper than the rhinoceros and somehow shallower than the birthday party.
I would say it's in terms of like explicit philosophical content, I think in a sense it's deeper. Like I have lots and lots of notes that I write into the book, you
Yeah,
know.
it's a very dense play and one reading. I do not have this whole thing down. I have one watching of the play for us, a very fresh single viewing. So
Yeah. But in terms of like raw emotional power, it's like, yeah, Pinter and Beckett are like in a different category. There's a reality and freshness to that. Now there is something to this like world of fantasy that's Michael Eslin refers to Genet as like a hall of mirrors. And that's certainly what it is. It's all just interest in appearance, like overcoming reality and denying reality and being the only true reality and appearance of appearance. And
it's
it's
good, but it's very tiring in a sense too.
yeah. I feel like I feel like I would like this play if it was 50 pages and not 100.
Gosh, it does. I mean, just okay. First of all, critically, I can understand easily why this is regarded as a masterpiece of 20th century play, right? Of course, but just on like a very boring level, there are moments where I was like, okay, I get the chief of police's fantasy.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's
like he's kind of it's kind of repetitive in a weird way that I don't think it would be in viewing it that it is maybe on the page.
yeah. So let's actually get into like the details flat out. So like we open the play and we're given like three consecutive scenes of a bishop, a um, a court, a judge, and a what was the last one? A general. And it
Yeah,
becomes increasingly clear that these aren't real ones; these are people paying to act like them with women.
right.
Um, so it starts off we think it's real, and then it turns out it's a fantasy. So another one of these play of appearance and reality here.
And
Now,
that opens up a lot of room for interpretation. I looked at the openings of all the different plays I could find on YouTube to see how they staged it. Some made it obvious that it was a fantasy at the beginning, others held on to the notion of its reality for a bit.
yeah, that's actually a point of like conflict. As in Genet wanted it to be basically like a cathedral of prostitution, like with all of the dialogue being presented in somber fashion, at least in the first act, first couple
Right.
scenes.
And the madame says why. She wants this place to maintain the fantastic structure without any cracks. No giggles, no matter what the client wants, however amazingly silly it is in those long lists of fantasies.
Oh God, I mean the ones we didn't even see were just so repulsive of like being Saint Teresa or being like the Virgin Mary or being a baby and the prostitute's your mother like holding and coddling you and breastfeeding you. It's like, well, this is not sexual. I'm not aroused by this, Janae. What is wrong with you, you sick fuck?
Well, I think that's why I think it goes from the normal to the more perverse because it's like the bishop and the BDSM and the horse. You're like, this is funny, but it's fine, you know. I mean, it's funny because it plays with it, and then like you get the laundry list, and you're like, oh God, no, 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 not all that, no, no.
Yeah, this could be much worse. He's
I
being much.
actually did. It's funny. There's a balcony like prostitution house in Blue Eyed Samurai that does something kind of similar. So in the anime, so it's kind of funny.
Hmm.
And the worst one involves, of course, an octopus, as you would imagine.
Naturally. Um,
But you know, okay, like the opening's great. I just 10 out of 10. I don't have any just critical problems with the first four quick scenes. I think they're perfect,
now,
actually.
one thing I want to say is like you find it funny, and I found it very interesting. I found it, like I'm making all sorts of notes about it, but I didn't find it funny. Like I'm sort of like I don't know it. I can see why like the incongruity of it is funny, but I feel like Genet is like wanting it to be taken seriously, as in he has this like almost like satanistic affection, sentimental affection for perversity. Um, and it's like you're supposed to take these interactions, like that whole weird thing with the judge, like having the executioner character whipping furiously the thief, the prostitute acting as the thief. Um, like that whole exchange, I feel like yeah, that's absurd. That's what the fuck. Um, but I feel he's meaning it literally as a genuine symbol of his attitude. But what do you give me something that you just find as like this is a riot?
Okay, I mean the list of exceedingly stranger perversions, but then with the baby, and then the one woman's like, I don't like that one. And you're
Oh,
like, yeah, I don't think you should like that one. Um, Also, in all the opening, I watched the opening scenes. In all of them, it's staged pretty clearly as a comedy, like a straight. This is a comedy.
hmm.
Like, um, I think that some of that comedy is lost in reading what's on the page, and the seriousness is what's gained in reading it on the page, and what's lost in some of the displays. But most of the ones I treat the opening just as funny.
Yeah, yeah. I
Oh,
can.
I mean like the the foot, lick it, lick the foot. It's like and it's aggressive.
I can see that as being funny having this judge character on all fours being told to lick the foot.
Also, it's not like he says when Arthur breaks character, it's not like he's like he gets sad. It's like he's at work and did something wrong because he's at work and doing something wrong. So it goes, shall I tan or hide the thief? Arthur, the executioner. What's eating you? Don't address me. Answer his honor. Call me the executioner. It's like, hey, you know, you just didn't do your job right there. It's like me at work. I just gave the guy the wrong change. Like, hey, Chris, you screwed up your job, man. That's not your role here.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Like actually, because there are just a lot of asides in the play like that. There are
Yeah.
where it's just like we're going through this sacerdotal ritual with extreme unction,
I mean the joke
but
about
then there's like a
Jesus.
little aside, like
Yeah, and then like one fantasy is a guy's like pretending he's Jesus, but he brings his own ropes, which is great because that's Jesus's own immolate. It's just funny. It's a play of mirrors right there.
what is this thing? What is this thing? I freaking forgot that detail.
As the play goes on, I get more and more entrapped in the hall of mirrors, and it does get hard to like give a clear like why are we doing this by the end. I think obviously there's going to be a lot of lures that we can latch on to about why we're doing this, but there are moments where I'm like, what's the point of that?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, to me, like I feel that the ultimate image the play is supposed to convey or the attitude towards life is like, and to fill it in for the reader.
Mhm.
So we're introduced to this brothel. We are increasingly aware that there's a revolution going on. The revolution is threatening to overturn the government, society, etc. And then at the last minute, the brothel keeper Irma manages to get together her clients in all of their fabulous robes and attires, and go out and present themselves on the balcony as the new symbols of society, reinforcing themselves. And that's the end of the revolution. They are victorious. They have now made their fantasies a reality. These gas men, um, in real
That's
life.
the chief of police.
Yeah, and the chief of police,
More.
he was actually a chief of police. And then like there's a long part of it, the chief of police, which someone who's literally like he wants to also be like a symbol that a sexual symbol that people come into the brothel to be to fantasize themselves as.
And they don't in this.
Except at the very end where
Yeah.
the Roger, the revolutionist on the former leader of the failed revolution, comes in and acts as the chief of police, and he fulfills his fantasy, and then he castrates himself as a way of punishing himself for his desire to be the chief of police and to spite the chief of police for defeating him. And the chief of police is fine with this state of affairs. Um,
By the way, if anyone's confused, there's a reason why this entire Elaine Badu lecture series is about this play, and Lacan's entire fifth seminar is about this play. It's because it's like super complicated.
wait,
And
have you already read that seminar?
no, I'm really that's why we're kind of doing this too early. But when I get through those, I have the essence. So like Lacan is a obviously he talks about the phallus as being important to this play, which it just is. Like
Well,
in a lot of ways,
in extreme, in the most extreme
literal ways.
literal way, the chief of police wants to represent himself as a giant phallus. Um,
Yeah, because it's like what the chief of police kind of misses is sort of the coverings of power. And so he goes for like the thing itself in a weird way, would be one way to think of it, I guess. I think there's about 40 ways to think about it, but that was funny. That was a funny moment in the play too, just to give it the comedy. Strange, but funny.
yeah, yeah, it was. I didn't find it funny at the time because I'm just like, I'll make it stop. Um,
I also was a little like, I'll make this stop this play. This is one of probably my least, it's weird, most relevant to the type of thinkers I read, least fun play.
yeah,
I don't know why. I
like
just
the things about it is like it feels to me like this is a much more interesting play to talk about than to read.
yeah, isn't it? Like, you
Because
know,
because yeah, we haven't like really delved into the actual like philosophical content that it's trying to get at. Like for instance, like one of the things that I thought was interesting that it is, the characters are trying so hard to become the fantasy, particularly the chief of police. Is it's not just that I want to be a function, I want to be this symbol in society, but they
yeah,
also take that becoming a symbol as a form of death, as moving towards immobility, which
which
makes
it makes sense. The image is sort of static. It's captured in time and space.
yeah, like when you imagine like as an abstraction, like just thinking about it in like Plato's terms,
Mhm.
it's this perfect ideal detached from this dimension, never doing anything, never acting, but is always just in its passive state of perfection. It's not living and doing things. Like when you think about the king, the abstraction of the king isn't doing anything. The king is
Or
just. Yeah.
or even has to, the queen has to hide to be the queen.
Yeah, that's a point they make because it's not even clear if the queen's dead or alive. Um,
No idea what the fuck was going on. I was loving it at that point for a moment, but I was like,
yeah,
okay.
that was, I have to say that was like so funny. Just like you have the emissary of the queen, and he's saying like, well, the queen, and the character asks like, what is the queen doing now? And he said like, well, the queen was considering going out and healing the wounded, but then she realized that she needed to do she needed to meet the obligations of being a queen, and withdrew. And well, what are the obligations? To be nothing. uh, to
Right.
withdraw.
And I think that this is like, this shows Genet's very, very like specific reading of Pascal, right? So in Pascal, you finally get, Pascal is really one of the first philosophers to talk about the role. He has a passage in the Pensies where it's talking about what is a king, but just a series of clothes, and and he's kind of the first thinker I think to really hit on that. And it's like this whole play is just about that one passage. Uh, I'll find it while we're talking.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, but
he's
and it goes on with like that that bit about the queen where it's like, what is she doing? Well, she's embroidering, and she's in what is she embroidering? She's embroidering a picture of a swan, and there's four blue hands in the corners, and she's deciding whether it should be in a lake or in a pond or in a teacup. This problem of what body of water for the swan to be in was selected precisely because it's dissoluble, and there is no solution. It'll be something she will do in perpetuity. It's like,
yeah.
what is this object? What is this thing we're reading? Um,
So and then it was like the so I mean on the simplest way of thinking about it, the role is static. The role trends towards the image that is like crucified or in time or in uh solidified, becomes trending towards death and solidification. And the that would be fine except for the fact that the fantasy involves the movement of different roles. And I think there is a degree in the fantasy here. I think that that Janae is outlining what moves in the fantasy and what doesn't.
well, I'm not sure if there's like the thing is like it seems to me like Janae is saying that nothing moves. Like it is fundamentally immobile. It is a kind of death. Like that's the whole thing of like what's being built for the chief of police and his striving after becoming, a symbol. It's a
Mm.
mausoleum. And they spend a lot of time talking about that mausoleum.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's like it keeps getting bigger.
yeah,
More, it's like a labyrinth by the end, and
yeah,
it's
it's like a
like,
mountain on top of a mountain. It's like got, it's being described as like, it has 20 towers on top of 40 libraries with 30 palaces, and that will just give you an impression of its true magnitude. Um,
so I think that there's some really easy reasons to say why Janae might be like somewhat of a nihilistic person. And I think that one aspect that is clearly apparent in this is like only a few characters have any bearing on a sense of like proportion in reality. Like, I deserve a big grave because I did a thing, instead of just the fantasy is I have the grave and that produces the good thing. Like, it's kind of flipped around. No one really does any, like, the
yeah,
hero is just a label. It's not like it's a symbolic label. No one has to do anything to earn anything in this world at all. It's just
yeah.
a
It's
play of positions, really.
I. I mean, what's funny about well, that's the thing. Like the play of position is, as in just how there is no function. As in somehow these guys who fantasize about being the lead judge and a bishop. Um, they don't have any qualifications for the job except looking the part. Um, um,
Yeah. And like, sure, that's
and like
fine.
this like a point that's like made that they keep making is like it's a relationship, as in the second sequence with the judge with the thief, is there's a point of like the judge saying like, well, without you, thief, like I could never be a judge, like my existence is contingent upon you, please tell me your crime so that I can exist through you. And that's where he's on, all fours
Yeah.
begging.
And it's great. It's that's why it's like purely, it's almost like a shockingly psychoanalytic play, which I should, love because I do all the psychoanalysis and the philosophy. And I think a year ago I would have been like, this is the greatest play I've ever read. But I just think at this point in my life, I also think that this type of play, more than the other ones, gives us an incomplete view of shit. Just if you were to say, does this view of reality capture the whole? I would just say no. Just absolutely not. That's and that's part of its virtue, is that that's what makes it funny and great, but it also is what makes it a little bit hollow at times, kind of like, I also like people, just like literal people, not just being in roles and situations. Like it's kind of missing that
Well,
spirit, in a
the
sense,
one
right? Like there's
issue
missing some
is,
spirit.
yeah, like one issue is that we don't have any characters, and we don't
No.
even have any mysterious characters, as in like with Kafka. It's like, okay, like one thing is we have K, who is a genuine character with his own feelings. Like he's
Yeah.
very impersonal and cold, but he's a genuine character,
Hmm.
with like actual attributes. But like the world around him is like, okay, yeah, like these creatures that inhabit the bureaucracy, they're not human beings, but you believe in them. You really believe in that sort of malicious impersonality and bureaucratic zeal, that defines them. While with these things, these bishop, again, quote, air quotes around all of this, but like a bishop and thief and executioner and pimp, and it's like none of these are real, none of these are actual beings in any sense whatever.
No, and I don't even think Genet would be mad at what we're saying. I think he'd be like, yeah, whatever, man.
Yeah, that's the
I
point. That's the point.
think I think the more positive view that this hot that like that's the negative side. I think the positive side is that this play is a little bit more like the preconditions to having a subjectivity instead of like a fully formed character. You have people broken down into their constituent parts. And cool. I mean, it's great on that level, but there is a sense of something like there's a part missing. Like they're not all characters, but like put all together, you have almost full subjectivity of
Like,
one person, but there's something, it's like,
well, like,
uh,
another like contrast is with last time with Ionesco's Rhinoceros, where it's
mhm.
like all of it's such a completely absurd world. Like it is a total fantasy. Like everybody's turning into rhinoceroses, and everybody is just sort of like, yeah, it's kind of disconcerting, isn't it? Like, did you know how much trouble it was like buying bread this morning? Um, like
But
that's
that was so human though. There was something about that that was so much more human than anything in here because it didn't make sense.
yeah, and it was.
No?
Yeah, and that was the whole point. Like we were making is that like, yeah, how else would you react to this situation? Like the only other possible reaction besides complacent denial is incoherent screaming.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think that's where when I read this, I had the same. Again, this is we're reading really great stuff. So this is hollowness, but at the highest level of literature.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
still something
Arguably.
like I don't personally resonate with. It had the same feeling when I read the two plays of Sartre. I read The Flies and No Exit, and I'm like, actually, it's kind of similar. Sartre with No Exit. There's just a lot of positioning, and
Oh God, I hadn't even like thought about connect. Yeah, yeah, it is exactly that way. No exit.
I think that there's something hollow about No Exit. Like No Exit has the same issue where I'm like, yeah, that was fun, and there's some deep existential positioning, but there isn't the rhinoceros, we have to go to work and do this, or in rhinoceros when it's like I want to do an imminent critique of the rhinoceros or an internal critique, which is arguably funnier than anything in either of these two plays.
Yeah, Rhinoceros is just magnificent. And also just again with the Rhinoceros, they're they're all real characters. They're all
Yeah.
like people you've known. Like they're so present. It's delightful.
Whereas
Uh,
the balcony is sort of like the architecture of human subjectivity, but it's a cold architecture.
it's
There's
like
kind of
Pilgrim's Progress, where it's like, oh, guess who I met on my walk today? I met Evangelist, and like, and he told me not to talk to legality and formality because that will lead me down the road of sin. Um, it's like that's the world of this play, except inverted with that sentimental perversion. Um,
yeah, I think like okay, so the external force that's coming in to the people on the inside, it's the real. It's going to disturb everything. It's going to disturb the order. But the rhinoceros was a little bit more like abyssal, right? Than an invading force. Because like once it flipped to them talking about it, I was like, oh, okay, we're actually getting their perspective. That's weird. Was my first thought. And then I was like, oh no, Genet has to give us their perspective because he's just in this world of mirrors. He has to always give these both
well, it's
perspectives.
yeah, with the revolutionary, like because okay, so we're clear, dear listener. For a while, we're like at the balcony brothel,
Yeah.
and then we're at the revolutionaries for like one scene, and then we spend the rest of the time back at the balcony brothel, and the revolutionaries. I mean, it's again like the same kind of play of images, except as like I mean, okay, here it is like, okay, we're trying to overturn society. We're trying to overturn like all of the traditional images. And then I think the big sort of thing that comes out of it is that one woman, Chantel, she then becomes the new image, the image of liberty storming the barricades from like the Delacroix painting.
Yeah.
And it's like, and the lead revolutionary who's having an affair with her is like actively trying to prevent that because well, I guess for two reasons. One is he doesn't want to establish a new illusion, and he doesn't want to lose his girlfriend to the abstraction of his girlfriend, to have her die as an abstraction in the way that like they talk about in other places in the play, that move
Kind
towards
of a weird,
inability.
weird thought for a human. a
Well,
little weird, right?
like that's like another theme. Like right when like the brothel madam, like
Yeah.
Irma, is like, and the chief of police are going to now like go out into the balcony and present themselves to society, as the symbols. They say like, she says, George, the chief of police, this will be the last time we'll ever be together because after this we will have been overwhelmed by our symbols.
Mhm.
Like we won't be individuals any longer. Um, and it's like, okay, 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 John, you realize that politicians have personal lives.
But I think like the only way I thought of this as like a great play. There's a lot in here, like we're kind of shitting on it right now, but there's a lot in here that's deep and interesting. And I think the only way in my brain I could stop eye rolling though at certain points was just like this is sort of like a prompt play where those dimensions that we're talking about are purposefully absent so that this becomes more what it is. Because if I think about this play in terms of what we're talking about now, it's like, well, you don't that's not how that works. You don't lose yourself in the symbol because you have all these other dimensions of being human. And
Yeah,
then it's like, no, those are absent. This is a prompt play that has like we're imagining they're not real. Okay, all right, that's fine.
well, it's weird. It's okay. Define prompt play for me.
But not like not prompt. It's not That's not a thing. Because I don't remember the phrase. But like where it's like, okay, we're going to imagine what humanity would look like if there wasn't anger, and then you write a short story.
Okay,
Um,
okay, okay.
yeah,
Like a Twilight Zone episode, sort of. Okay.
like it's like on this, it's like, okay, we're going to imagine humanity is this way, so that some aspect of humanity seems more comes
No,
to the.
I got the idea, and it's like,
And I think that's the only way I can read this play as
yeah,
believable. Like that's the absurd part of it.
yeah. Like for me, it does. One way of actually thinking for me, my reaction to the play is when you were talking. I think you really hit the nail on the head, saying it feels like no, this isn't like a actually coherent, complete vision of human life like the other plays we've done.
Hmm.
Like like even like Materlink, where it's like okay, we're off in this world of like mystical fantasy, full blown. It's like no, that's still a complete universe. Like that's still believable in its own terms.
Yeah.
Um, but like here, it's like it's not, and I think a big part of that in my mind is it reads to me a rather like propaganda. Like not total, but like it feels to me like, oh, Genet wants to make these points about our, our relationship to our symbols and its role in life.
Yeah. It's like,
And
but
like,
the goal, it's like philosophical propaganda
yeah,
instead of like political propaganda.
yeah. It's like it's not coming from like an actual fundamentally sincere point of view. It's more like, well, yeah, here's ideas that I've now committed myself to, and it's like, well, but you're not actually looking at the facts. Like you're not actually looking at like what real human beings are like and function. Um, so like that's I want to say like there's some level of like I feel like it's insincere on a certain level. That's how it strikes me. It's still brilliant, but it lacks something there.
Yeah, I mean, I just think we're on the same page. I think I think this is why
Which the gay prostitute and Nazi collaborator, maybe he's insincere.
about his
You know,
role.
I don't think that's the worst thing you could say about John Genet is that he's insincere.
I
Um,
think I think okay, I don't know. I I wear a lot of hats. Like when I'm teaching children, I'm wearing a different hat than when I'm teaching adults at the university. And even at the in like even when I'm teaching adults, one of the first things that you're really trying to teach young composers is that they just can't wear the composer hat. They have to put on the performer hat because I'll look at a piece and I'll be like, "Have you thought about how a trombone would play that?" And they're like, "Oh, I never thought of that." And you're like, "That's pretty important because a human will play this." And so I I like this dimension of like we're just going to interrogate roles and their relationship to fantasy. I thought that was well done. Um, I wish it was shorter. It's
God,
like,
I wish it were shorter.
and it wasn't even that long. Like it's like one act, 9 scenes. But I was like, there are some moments, especially in the longer scenes, where I was like, I think I get it. Like, man, like you made
No,
your point.
no, this is like I mean in this collection, I think this is actually the longest play, as in it's certainly it's longer than Rhinoceros or equivalent
Mhm.
length to Rhinoceros or to the birthday party. Um,
Yeah,
so it's a full length play here.
and I think that what I almost want to after I finish. So I can give you like the basics of Lacan on this. It's kind of a simple point that he makes, but he does a reading. I think it's like for the whole seminar of this play, and I can I understand why philosophers want to talk about this play. It goes back to exactly what you said at the beginning, which is like this play is really fun to gonna like talk about, but not really fun to read. Um, and I think it also is specifically helpful in understanding certain dimensions of psychoanalysis, which just personally between the two of us, I don't ever want to read fiction so that the main goal is understanding something else. Like that's stupid. But okay, so we have it. But like for Lacan, what he talks about is comedy. And the point that I remember reading about is that one function of comedy is to show that the phallus is a fraud. So that not like the phallus is having a literal penis, but like the phallus as signifier of power doesn't have the power it thinks it has. And yeah, sure. That just seems to be part of the play. I'm with it. That seems to be in there.
Um,
Power is critiqued in that way with the chief of police.
yeah, man, it is to say like that way of phrasing things. It's just so bullshit. Like no, just say power. Just say power is not as powerful. Like don't make it don't make it like phallus.
Oh, he's a
Weird.
psychoanalyst.
I
He has
know,
to
I know.
say yes.
It's just like that's just the sort of thing. I just like I have respect for the things you've told me about Lacan. He seems like a real thinker, but Jesus Christ.
Well, he
Um,
comes from Freud.
yeah, naturally. Um, I mean,
But
eh,
isn't that like kind of literally the point here
yeah,
with
yeah.
him?
Like
I mean,
it's
it doesn't seem like Lacan's making too crazy of a point
no,
when he
it's
normally makes more
reasonable.
crazy points.
No, it's reasonable like in a certain context, but like just as in like oh God, I mean, I have to say like that's just one of those things where it's like you have a giant. The guy wants his symbol to be a giant penis. Like that. That's just such a that's actually one of the things that strikes me as insincere. I'm just like, okay, you're just borrowing Freudian symbolism now. Like you're not actually like being an artist here. You're like
But what
you're
would be more fun?
what?
What would be funnier? It's a comedy. What would be a better giant over the top symbol?
No, I mean it's not completely. Okay, not completely. I guess okay, actually here's actually my issue is I'm
No,
not
I'm not disagreeing with you. It's ridiculous. I
no,
just think
it
we
can
gotta
work.
find something, you know.
It can work in a certain way, but I feel when Genet is doing like I see the comedy of like almost like if you had a character who was pretentious and Freudian, and this is what he was doing was like trotting out the phallus. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, cool. Like that's funny because you're making fun of that aspect of it. But here it's like, no, Janae's taking that symbol seriously, and I'm sorry, I can't take you seriously when you take that seriously.
Well, I think it's more about I think that I okay, so I like that part of the play. I because I think that the chief of police's problem is that like all everyone else's fantasy depends on this just rigmarole of
No,
stuff.
it
And
is funny.
and
It
he's
is
like,
no.
I see the point. It's sex,
I
you
guess I'll just
know?
say it is like I have mixed feelings about it. I'll admit of like there is a sense in which it's like yeah, I'm not pretending what my fantasy's about here. Let's just put this on the table.
I
Um,
remember it. Oh yeah, it's sex. You know, like that was what I took that as is like the thing that cuts through all the role bullshit is like just like a giant dick. And I think it's fine. I I guess my critique would be I think a lot of this is great, and I think a lot of Rick and Morty does it better. You know, I mean, because Rick and Morty is always playing with roles. It's the essence of the comedy. He's a scientist. Oh, but he's the grandpa. There's all these. There's this. position out everything that's in there is in shows like Rick and Morty, but Rick and Morty and other shows like that just have more, I don't know, pathos, like humanity in
Like,
them.
Rick and Morty, like the thing is that they have characters.
Yeah,
Like they have
yeah.
very distinct. Like the thing is like no, it's not. He's not. He's playing as a grandpa. No, he actually is just a legitimately grumpy grandpa, and also a nihilist, and also a genius scientist, and you
And he's
know,
not actually a nihilist. It shows up at certain points. Things crack through. He's got depth. He's got
yeah, like it's
Morty is sort of the everyman, but he has moments of heroicism.
yeah,
Jerry's a coward, but like
mixture. There's complication, but like yeah, like he is himself, and it's like none of these characters have a self,
I think,
which is kind of the point. It's kind of the point of like yeah, their functions, their roles, because this is a fantasy world of illusion and mirror. You know,
yeah,
like this is nothing like. It's interesting to like compare this to both Rhinoceros and the Birthday Party because in both of those like it's very nonsensical and like in the Birthday Party it's like what human being would say these words like like
yeah. But
how would you come up with this kind of nonsense but it's such believable
it's
nonsense.
so believable, and it's also exaggeration to prove a human point instead of exaggeration to prove a function point, which but basically, our critiques of this play are heading off a critique someone would make, which is they would say, look, guys, you're missing the point of this era, which is like in building up what a human's supposed to be, none of these are characters, they're preconditions for character. And I would say that's fine, but like, look, here's other plays that are in the same era doing similar things, having similar messages, and they do succeed in presenting characters also. So that's my critique of the play. And I loved it. I mean I loved half of it. I don't know why. This is the only one like when I'm
Well,
reading the
like
birthday
they
party,
do like I have read some criticism where they say like the later part of the play drags. Uh,
boy, boy does it do so. And you never think it's funny because every play we've read so far, I mean I remember making a point last time in the difference between the fiction we've read versus the plays is that fiction I think there's often more leeway for downtime. You can do a little more aside, whereas in play, everything is always in motion. And I think that that part of is part of the conflict, right? Like the balcony is about these static roles that happen, and it kind of does freeze itself at a point.
yeah, I mean that's the thing is like it's at its best when it's just giving you these static rituals. The bishop staring at himself, this triune thing, which is the judge and thief and executioner, and
Right? Whenever you say the word triune, I just remember this. It's an episode of The Atheist Experience, which I used to watch not for any serious, but just for horror show effect. And the guy calls in and he's just got this southern drawl and he's like, I argue the universe is triune in nature. And it would fit perfectly in one of these plays, actually, with that call.
there's the
Triune
real.
universe. Um, so I think that one of the things that I actually think there is a slight self-helpiness about this play, which is really
Oh
weird.
God, where is this going?
I know. I think like I guess what Genet's one of his like weird messages is like beware the fantasy in a sense.
No,
No?
no.
Do you think he loves it? Is he just totally perverse and just is there
I
and
just, I mean, it's just a vision of like the world is just this sort of psychosexual symbolic pretension,
yeah.
like just this sort of hollow play of like exerting yourself on the universe through becoming a death abstraction. Like that's the kind of thing that's going on here. Like I don't there's no prescription. There's no prescription out of this.
I think you're right actually. I So there's a concept in psychoanalysis called primary narcissism, which is like kind of its more negative beginnings, which is that the baby begins by gratifying its own needs. It goes through all this life. And I think it's funny that I was mentioning primary narcissism and then Ray froze and then died.
Too close to home there.
That was pretty funny.
Um,
Um, and other people, in a sense, are like mediated through your own primary narcissism.
yeah.
There's also like flip side philosophies which put the other person first. There's, you know, you can a dime a dozen viewpoints on what this is. I think this play is too much about primary narcissism and not enough about like I mean, I don't know, like other people are real, like they have existence. They have you can't know them. They can't always fit your function. And I think that's partly where I would say I don't like the worldview of this play, is it makes primary narcissism hide the other in a way that I just don't know if it does in real life. Like, I don't just love my wife because of their function. Like, there's something
Well,
more, you know?
the thing is like it's not just okay. Like the dichotomy with like the function is like you have the function and you have the symbol. Like I forget the exact word he uses for it, but like the image.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and like and like the I feel like the best sort of moment for that of like the image being created is like when they're after they've assumed the real point of being bishops and all that. You have the photographers informing them how to take the best photo for this, and you know one thing is they want a photo of the bishop taking the sacrament, you know, the Eucharist, and so they take the monocle from one character and they position it as if it were a Eucharist for him in the photo. It's like,
It's great.
it's like yeah, yeah, okay, we got more fake imagery here. But no, but the primary narcissism thing. The thing is one thing I want to say about is at least in this image of like a baby, like in this sort of in the Freudian image of being like pure hedonism, which I don't. I'm not
No,
even
no, not hedonism, needs.
needs.
Pure
Okay, okay, yeah,
needs.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
you have water, breast, whatever,
Yeah,
body,
of pure sort of
drive.
non-conceptual, sensualistic, physical needs. Um, that sort of where it's like, no, that's not Genet though. Like you don't actually see like anybody getting a physical need satisfied. Like for a play that takes place in the brothel, there's remarkably little fucking. Um,
It's all want and desire. It's not need, right? Like that's kind of this thing you want to say, right? Is it's not like
yeah, but it's even less than that of it's just pure second-handedness. Of it's like I just want to be this image of a thing. Like I and I when they actually become like a bishop in general and assume those roles, they're saying like, yeah, it was kind of nicer when we didn't have a function. Like when we could
yeah, it was so much less work, man.
yeah, it's like it was nice to just be pure image and to look forward to it. And now I'm always in my general's breeches.
Yeah. Well, it's
Um
kind of like it's like Genet takes really seriously Lacan's maxim, desire is desire of the other. And the way Lacan means it is that what you want is first mimed by someone else that's shown as desirable, and that's how you learn your own desire. So I think that that's kind of this concept running rampant, right? Is like you don't have your own desire, you have this. I think your phrase, I think the phrase from objectivism, second-handedness, is kind of exactly it. It's no one takes a stand on their own desire in this play.
yeah, it's
That maybe the guy who castrates himself.
um
Maybe
one
that's
thing about it
actually
like I guess relating the objectivist terminology to the Lacanian terminology of, you have the imaginary, which is what other people think of you, and the symbolic, which is like your role and positioning in the hierarchical framework. Like with when the objection talks about second-handedness, it's like primarily about the imaginary in that
Right.
sense. It's primarily what other people think about you, and the symbolic gets drawn up in that because it's about what other people think of you in a certain kind of way. But here, like with Genet, it's like it's just the symbol. It's just this like filling a role, and it's interesting the fact that it's like they want total privacy while fulfilling that role. As in, like, the first scene is the pseudo bishop staring at himself in the mirror, in admiration of his mitre and uh, bishop Catholic things.
I love that little thought about just a fun little external thought that like the bishop absolves you of your sins, but it's like really important that you did commit those sins.
Yeah, yeah, like
Like, well,
you
that's
do
pretty
better for
real.
the money I'm paying. Um,
It's like, that's just the Catholic Church already. Like that's kind of the point he was making already. It's like, wait, yeah, I'm absolving you of the sins, and then in perpetuity, that's the structure of me going and sinning more.
yeah,
Because I'll be uh, retroactively forgiven.
yeah, but like to bring it back to your primary narcissism thing, it's like okay, the infant wants milk and it enjoys drinking milk. Here, no,
No,
the
an
all
infant.
you're getting is like just the positioning.
Yeah,
It's just the positioning in this role. That's
yeah.
and oh god, the fucking gymnastics around this crap, like the sort of like not like not it's not like it's like power plays almost, where it's just like talking, where the chief of police and the bishop and all of that are talking about like, no, well, it's through me that you gain your meaning, and it's only through my symbol that your symbols have significance. And then it's like, but where does God play into this? I'm like, well, God is beneath us, but above whatever it is. Like,
Oh my God, that was when I started skimming that passage because I think it's important in like if this was like a treatise, I'd feel like I'd so like if instead of writing a play, Janae wrote a book about just like and just called it symbolic positions, we wouldn't really have any of these issues. It'd just be tracing these signifiers because we're not trying to present an aesthetic work. It's just it's there's no implication that it would be the whole of human reality. But this sort of, I guess one of the values we're bringing to this play is that we value characters.
yeah,
That's a value I'm bringing to it. I don't think it's a very controversial value that we're bringing to it. I just think it's maybe a bare fact of fiction in a certain
yeah,
sense.
it's like we want, like what we want is like just reality. And like I feel like what, like the moment, like the phrase that actually like summed up Janae perfectly in a sense, in this, and it wasn't a line anybody said, but it was describing the character of Arthur, who was like, it's like Irma's girlfriend or whatever, and like a boyfriend.
Yeah.
But like he's described in the description, it says dressed as the classical pimp.
Yeah, I love that.
Classical pimp is to me like that is the essence of Genet. Like it's classical, it's it's sort of like styledly formal in a sort of an elegant way, but styled, and pimp. You know, it has that perversity like built into it. Like,
I think you're right. And I think that's different in terms of Janae being gay. I think it's a different view than F. Scott Fitzgerald by like a lot. Because there's a fabulousness in F. Scott Fitzgerald, right? We talked about the kind of uh performance of it. And I just think it's a little different here. I don't think it's the same thing.
yeah, it's interesting that I was. well, one thing is that like for each of these like episodes we do, I always come up. It's always in the format of X on Y. It's
Mhm.
like Chekhov on spiritual death or Pynchon on paranoia, and like I always just come up with like the why in that like as I'm like uploading the video.
Mhm.
Um, this one was just like, well, what am I going to do for the why here? We've already done illusion like four times. Uh, and it's like, that's what it's about. But it's like, but it's such a different kind of illusion. Like the way that like even like Tennessee Williams, who was also like at least bisexual. Um, like the fantasy in A Streetcar Named Desire is it's it's so much more grounded of like, yeah, here's like this poor shattered human being who's sort of trying to keep on to this illusion of being a southern belle and not a whore.
Well,
And
yeah, that's it though. I think it's something before that though. I'm sorry to cut you off.
no, go on, go on.
I think you're right. I think that when we talk about like an essence of a play, it's something different than any evidence we're going to point to in the play. It's like trying to consider the whole object and its qualities, which is more fun and more tricky though too. And it's different than but related to conceiving of the whole author and their characteristics. I think that what the aura around Tennessee Williams is, not the Glass Menagerie, I didn't really like that one, but around the Streetcar Named Desire is that the play itself is sort of desirable. Like the fun, the stuff, the pageantry, the sets, the characters, that world is sort of a world that has an engine to it. It's a place that you might not want to live, but hey, I don't know. It seems like pretty
It's
good
interesting
play.
to look at, like a zoo.
Yeah, it's like a zoo. Yeah. More than the Glass Menagerie was a zoo, which is a little paradoxical. But like with this one, the trouble is it doesn't signify world to me. Like it's not a world that I do or don't want to live in because it didn't signify that this is a world fully at all in my
Yeah, and it's weird where it's like the thing is like it's like it is self-consciously cardboard in a certain way, but that doesn't fix the cardboard. Like that doesn't make it like you can
yeah.
be in a sense you can be sincerely insincere. Like you can have these characters be like fake or like inhuman like the paintings of Chirico are like, yeah, this is like a weird fantasy realm that's there,
Yeah.
but it's real. It feels sincere in this deep way. Genet, like a big part of our complaint is it reads like a treatise,
Like an exercise.
a very gay treatise.
Very. I
Um,
actually think in the way you're using it, Tennessee Williams is more gay, but it's more fun gay.
yeah, it's like actually one thing about it is like that's what I have to say like in terms of like the gayness is like it's just like Janae's so style. Um, it's just so like elaborate and overdone, and like it's fun. It's sort of cute in a way, but it is difficult to get over. It's like he even like the way like he has characters like ask questions sometimes has that like theatricality. Like there was like one time just asking like like oh like where's like Irma, and like the character goes where, when, how, why, what for, like just assaulting you with that. It's like, oh
Yeah,
god.
I remember. So I don't think this guy's a great thinker, and I'm not going to recommend his books, but because I've read three of them, so I'm an informed not
Oh,
recommendation.
and by the way, just to appear on that other point I was making about the style, like it's a
Yeah.
particular kind of gay. I'm not saying in general.
Oh
um
no. We're talking about him.
yeah, just that.
Yeah,
I
well,
just
that's why we
want
were contrasting with Fitzgerald and like the
yeah,
different.
yeah. Just want to put that there. Okay, so you were the guy
You
you're
don't want to get you don't want to get canceled where they take that soundbite and they're like, "Look at Ray, homophobe of the century." I know you're fine. Okay, so that's what Sarah Sherman does on SNL with Colin Jost. It's always taking Colin Jost at a line. It's like, what? Colin Jost is making fun of cancel culture. It's great. I I think that the way to do this, I mean we've been dancing around basically our main criticism, which we share between the two of us, which is that it's like a philosopher's play instead of a playwright's play. I mean, I'm paraphrasing us, but like, when I read the Sartre, that's my issue with Sartre's plays is that they're fodder for a worldview that he's trying to construct instead of just letting reality like spill out into into the real world. Um, I think that what I want to see is I want to see this as a Coen Brothers movie in a drag club. And I think we're getting closer to making it not with the script. They're going to write their own script, but I want to see a retelling of this. I almost like when I finished it, I was like, I want to write this as a novel and make it human. Like I wanted to just immediately rework it right from the beginning.
yeah, but how did you? I mean, how do you even do that here?
I don't
it,
know.
it feels like the first. I mean, there's either two directions that come to my mind. One is like you actually have characters, you actually have like the bishop and all of them, like they're actually starting to feel like human beings.
Yeah.
Uh, or like you somehow like give them like an insincere reality, like they're but still that's still kind of making them characters. There's still like there might be aliens, but they're still real. I'm like, I don't know how. I don't even know how.
That would I be the main goal is like, no, I want to do this, but like in a way where okay, like here's more specifically in the structure of like human subjectivity. What I'm missing from this is that for most people, the fantasy is kind of a problem. Like it's not like, and that's the inversion the play does, which is on one hand brilliant, but like if fantasy isn't a problem to a person, I think we miss something. Like your fantasy, whatever it is, if it's world annihilation, destruction, sexual gratification, ego death, whatever it is, it's not like you're sitting there like,
Great fantasies you got here, man.
I don't know, like
Like
or
there was
or
like one
the
of
free
those that's
one,
like normal. But yeah, go on,
a
go on.
pink elephant riding on a comet. I don't know, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. The point is that because it's fantasy, it's not it's it's fantastic. It's a view of yourself beyond all reality testing. And I think that like more developed humanity would have a little bit more of the awareness that your fantasy is like a conflict in you. It's not like I just miss that
Yeah,
conflict.
no, I mean, again, like you really nailed it earlier when you were saying that, like, yeah, this isn't like a complete vision of reality because
No,
it's it's like a lot of what's done in this play and like the relationships of people to their fantasies into the symbolic. It's like, yeah, I there's a real truth to a lot of that, or at least a genuine like plausibility to that attitude. Like I disagree with
sure.
the play's philosophy, but it's like, but there's like good points. There's something there to grapple with. But then there's just this whole like insincerity of, yeah, but when people go to the store and buy eggs, they're not doing that to fulfill a symbol. They just wanted some eggs. Like there's no like there's a real sense of like being a general actually implies like knowing shit. Um
Yeah, I mean, we both made that point at different points that like there's no withal in this play. know all. Like I have competency and a discipline to do a thing, which is again, it's fine. I think you're right. I also would say that, like, to make it even more specific, your might be fantasy might be the wrong word here, but whatever, like whatever version of yourself that's preventing you from getting those eggs might be actually part of the problem, not the mundane.
Well, no,
Like,
as in,
right,
like,
like let's say like
you're
you have
making my point, except concretely.
yeah,
Like,
it's like
you
you
know,
want to go. Let's say, okay, like I have a regular life. I live and I enjoy. Let's say I'm a morphine addict and I kill squirrels. I don't know, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And like, but like, I want to live a normal life, but I just every time I see a squirrel, it's like, oh, that fantasy of eradication shows up or whatever. Like, the fantasy is a problem.
well,
Oh,
like
it's
a
not like a
literal example of the problem is when we did Miller, we did Death of a Salesman. Of like
yes.
Willy Loman's life is plagued by this fantasy of the American dream for him.
And
Of
the structure that Genet proposes of being frozen in an image, all that stuff's there. But the play is infinitely better because it's also a problem.
Yeah, it's like there's an actual reality, as in, I mean, you do act, because that's the thing about Death of a Salesman. Like, you actually spend time in Willy Loman's fantasies.
Yeah.
You actually are there, and like you're seeing like these contradictory and bizarre beliefs that he's like having. And it's great because you actually see how that informs his dysfunction in real life.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. So yeah, and here it's like, no, you just have this fantasy, and like it's so, and I have to say, it's just it's. I mean, I can see a play that is like a literal fantasy, like it's done from the perspective of a character, like imagining the whole thing. I can't think of an example of that that comes to mind. I guess the closest thing in my mind is like Rashomon, where it's like, okay, you got four different characters here, or three different characters, like imagining the same sequence, and it's all filtered through them. That isn't so much an issue of fantasy, but of just lying. But it's similar.
Sure. I mean, their desire is still caught up in why they're lying.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I guess, I mean, again, you don't like it, but like the Glass Menagerie is like it's presenting its. I mean, he calls it a memory play. You know, it's meant to be like, oh yeah, yeah, this is how I remember things back at home, and it's like it's kind of romanticized, exaggerated,
Yeah.
made dreamlike with nostalgia. Like, I like that idea of, no, we're not getting reality, we're getting it filtered through someone's recollections. That's a nice idea. I not terribly well implemented. I think it's competently done in like
Oh, in the
Glass.
Glass Menagerie? Yeah, yeah. No, no, no. I'm sorry. Like, it's still we're only reading like really great stuff. So it's like, no, yeah, it's like on that level. Like, yeah, you are on the council, but you don't have the rank of master. Talking about the Glass Menagerie and also the balcony. I'm like, no, no, no. You are a part of the group. You're not like, Mace Windu. It's like, no, I'm sorry, you're not Eugene O'Neill Yoda. Like, it's
That's it's so damn funny how
and it's like,
those stinking prequels like actually like
yeah.
have like powerful symbolic meaning, even though they're fucking trash.
Oh, they're so enjoyable. Or like, and I think Tennessee Williams' Streetcar Named Desire. It's like, yeah, you're like a Jedi and you're a master, but you die really fast in one of the Clone War things, and we're sad about it. But you're not Yoda. So, yeah. Um. So my thoughts on this are going to be also tabled. I think that's all I basically have to say about this play at this point. Um, when I finish reading the Elaine Badu, and Elaine Badu is using this play in a non-aesthetic way. He's trying to look at this play as a structure of the present time. So he's just doing full, he's not thinking aesthetically about this play at all, which is kind of cool. Like, what are the brothels in modern America? What is the rebel? What are those positions if they were out there in reality? Which is exactly what you think a philosopher would do this with this play.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's like it's great. There's different ways of doing things, but it's like it just feels like it's like yeah, that's great to do that sort of thing with it. It serves its function, but it's like, and we're missing the most important part of the function here. We're missing the human value. Just the sheer trauma of the experience. Which maybe we can consider doing the other two plays that people talk about with Genet a lot is like the maids and I don't know what is that other fucking one? Death
Black.
Watch. Death Watch.
Death Watch.
Yeah, I have like Sartre wrote like a preface to like the edition I have, so maybe we'll think about doing that because
Some
it's
point, I'm really in the human mood right now. I've been reading
yeah
these
I'm
Count
kind of
short stories. I want to do Gogol at some point. I want to do like,
oh god something human yeah like I don't
yeah,
want
like
to
all every
stop
single
it make it
Japanese.
stop I don't want to do any more of this Genet it's
I know. I'm good. I mean, I'm also reading the guy who wrote the cat, the most famous Japanese novelist. What's his name? Not Kuwabata, but
yeah
before him, the founder kind of the modern Japanese novel,
oh Suzuki right or
Soseki.
Sasaki yeah yeah
I'm reading one of his, and it's like so human, and I'm just kind of in that mood.
yeah
It's so
yeah
great.
let's stick with it let's stick with
Okay, let's do something real. I don't want to do the Mamet either, the American Buffalo. I want to do something like Gogol. I want to do a real,
Matt okay Mamet or Mamet whatever that
yeah.
that one's actually pretty that one's just fun that was fucking fun like
Okay, I will. We'll do it at some point then. But it's your turn. I'd love for you to text me whatever, and we'll read it.
okay
I'd like to do some fiction.
you
I'd
mean
like to leave plays for a little bit. I'm good on plays. I found
okay,
myself.
okay, good point. I'll come up with something, man. I'll come up with something. Yeah, my life is just plays right now. It feels like, but anyway,
I'm ready for fiction.
yeah, like we'll do something. But okay, so let's put a cap on this and like, so how did this traumatize you, Chris?
Yeah, so I think that there are times when a person does get swallowed up by their role and they lose their humanity. Weirdly, I think Sartre's great about talking about that. It's one aspect of bad faith. And so I think if that's the avenue in, like it was a whole play of just only bad faith. And I thought it was good. I think that the way fantasy works and just outlining that structure was really interesting. I didn't find it that traumatic. I found it really interesting and philosophically successful, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't say I responded to this as a human being,
Mm,
which is basically damnation as far as art is concerned.
it's pretty
I
bad.
I can't say I was traumatized in any. I didn't get contact with the real. I got like, oh, those are some pretty good philosophical points, Janae. Interesting, interesting. Um, and I like to actually do like your bad faith thing. It's like there there are plays where like everybody's in bad faith like Eugene O'Neill's The Iceman Cometh
I guess
is
like most characters in most plays, right?
yeah well it's especially that one it's like
Yeah.
everybody is a fucking faker here guys
Yeah.
but it's like it's sincerely done in that
Mm.
here it's like no it's bad faith about bad faith like Janae is not actually giving us reality Janae is not there's basic obvious facts about human existence he's not confronting it feels like to me um so I recommend it now no, no. I just
Recommended for people who are reading Images of the Present Time or Lacan's Fifth Seminar as a prerequisite, not for enjoyment.
Yeah.
It's a prerequisite to understand what they're saying, but it's fine. It's not, as I feel like I'm relying on this way too much, but it wasn't Antigone. Just wasn't Antigone, man. Like a
That's a good one.
It's,
All right.
I
Well,
know I didn't feel that for when she let them rot. I didn't have any moment of that in this, and that nothing was there like that.
yeah.
Wasn't Shakespeare.
So, all right. This was a great episode, Chris, and we'll be back next week or whenever. So, all right.
Bye. Thanks.